You are nobody special when the world catches fire. Just a small businessman with a failing company, a stack of unpaid bills, and a factory that barely turns a profit. Then the newspapers scream a single word: war. Everyone around you is terrified, but as you read those headlines, something cold and quiet in you does not feel any fear at all. It feels like opportunity. The young men march off to enlist, waving flags, certain they will be home by Christmas. Mothers weep at the train stations. The whole country holds its breath. You watch it all from the window of your empty office, and you do the math that no one else dares to do. Armies do not just need soldiers, they need boots, blankets, bullets, and bread. And someone has to sell it all to them. That night you cannot sleep. War, you realize, is not a tragedy to be survived. It is a market to be cornered. Governments are about to spend more money than has ever existed, and they will spend it fast, and they will spend it desperately. All you have to do is have what they need before anyone else does. You are done being poor. You have finally found your war. So you gamble everything. You mortgage the house, you borrow from men you really should not borrow from, and you retool your struggling little factory overnight. Your wife thinks you have lost your mind. Maybe you have, but while the rest of the world is busy being afraid, you are busy placing the biggest bet of your entire life on the one thing certain to grow: death. You put on your only good suit and you walk into the war ministry with nothing but nerve. The corridors are pure chaos, panicked officials drowning in requisition orders they cannot possibly fill. You do not flinch. You tell them you can deliver. And when a tired old colonel finally looks up and asks how soon, you smile and say the two words that will make you rich: right now. Your first contract is almost laughably small. 50,000 pairs of boots for the infantry, due in 6 weeks. It is nothing, it is everything. You sign your name, your hand barely shaking, and just like that you owe the army more boots than your factory has ever made in a year. You have no idea yet how you will do it. But you will. Failure is no longer something you can afford. You drive your workers day and night. The machines never stop. You hire anyone with 2 hands, women, old men, children barely tall enough to reach the benches. The pay is poor and the hours are brutal, but there is a war on and nobody complains too loudly about that. You deliver the boots 2 whole days early, and the army immediately turns around and asks you for 100,000 more. Then the first real payment lands in your account and you just stare at the number until it stops looking real. It is more money than you have made in the last 5 years combined. Your debts vanish overnight. For the first time in your entire life, you are not simply surviving anymore. You are winning. And the war you are beginning to understand has barely even started yet. You learn the Profiteer's first secret fast. The army is desperate, and desperate men do not inspect too closely. So the leather gets a little thinner, the stitching gets a little cheaper. The soldier at the front will never know, and even if he does, what is he going to do? Complain from a trench 1,000 miles away. Every single corner you cut is just another coin in your pocket. Within months, you are almost unrecognizable. You move to a bigger office, hire men to do the work you used to do yourself, and start speaking to generals as their equal. The boots were only ever the beginning, a test you passed. Because you have seen the ledgers now, you know where the real money in this war is hiding, and it is not in boots. It is in what kills. You expand into everything an army devours: tinned food, uniforms, bandages, barbed wire, timber for the trenches. If a soldier touches it, eats it, or dies behind it, you want to be the one selling it to him. You buy up struggling factories for pennies and turn them all toward the front. Your little company is becoming an empire, and its only real customer is the war itself. You discover you can charge almost anything you like. When men are dying for want of supplies, no clerk ever argues about the invoice. So you inflate every price you can. A blanket that costs you 1 coin, you sell for 3. Multiply that by 1,000,000 blankets, and by 10 million more still to come. The suffering at the front is not a problem for you. It is a line on a spreadsheet, and it only goes up. You learn that contracts are not won on quality. They are won at dinner. So you start spending your new fortune on the men who sign the orders. Fine wine, private clubs, quiet envelopes of cash slid across polished tables. A general's favor is the very best investment there is. Soon the biggest contracts of the war come straight to you before anyone else has even heard that they exist. Other men have noticed the gold rush too. Rivals, circling. But you are hungrier and far less burdened by conscience than any of them. You undercut them, you outbid them, you spread quiet rumors that ruin them. One by one your competitors lose their contracts, their reputations, and their companies. In a war, you have learned, there is more than one kind of casualty, and you intend to be the last man standing. Sometimes the reports reach your desk, a batch of your rushed ammunition that jammed, rations that arrived rotten, men who suffered because you chose profit over care. You read each one exactly once, and then you place it face down in a drawer that you never open again. You are very good, you realize, at not looking. It is a skill, this blindness, and it is making you unimaginably rich. But the biggest money is not in what feeds an army. It is in what arms one. Shells, rifles, explosives, the machinery of killing that a war swallows faster than any factory alive can make it. It is a darker business and a far more dangerous one. You stand in your office and you weigh the line you are about to cross. Then you think of the money and you cross it. You retool everything for war itself. Your factories, once making boots, now cast shell casings and forge rifle barrels around the clock. The work is dangerous and the pace is merciless, but every crate that rolls out your gates is worth a small fortune. You are no longer just supplying the war, you are arming it. And an armed war, you know, is a war that simply never runs out of customers. The demand is bottomless. No matter how much you produce, the front devours all of it and screams for more. A single day's battle can burn through more shells than you can make in an entire week. For a man who sells those shells, there has never been a business like it in all of history. Every gun that fires, fires your product. Every barrage is a cash register ringing in the dark. You walk your factory floor like a king surveying his kingdom. Thousands of workers, mostly women now, fill shells with an explosive powder that slowly poisons their skin yellow. You know that it is happening. You pay a little extra and call it generous. They need the work, and you need the shells, and the war needs them both. Everyone, you tell yourself, is making a choice here. You just made the smart one. It is not all safe behind a desk. A rival tries to have your shipment sabotaged. A warehouse explodes and you lose a fortune, and a dozen men in a single night. You start traveling everywhere with armed guards. In this business, the profits are enormous, but so are the enemies, and not all of them wear the other side's uniform. Some of them shake your hand at dinner and smile. Still, the money pours in faster than you can possibly spend it. You buy a mansion, then a bigger one. Motor cars, paintings, a box at the opera you never have time to attend. You wear suits that cost more than your workers earn in a year. And the newspapers, the ones you do not quietly own, begin to whisper a name for men like you, war profiteers. You find that you rather like the sound of it. You are powerful enough now that the rules simply bend around you. Tax inspectors are paid to look elsewhere. Journalists who dig too deep find their stories quietly killed. Politicians who denounce profiteers on the floor of Parliament dine at your table that very same night. You have discovered the final secret of real wealth. When you are rich enough, the law stops being a wall and becomes a door. Then comes the offer you always knew deep down would come. A discreet intermediary, a neutral country, a numbered account. The enemy needs what you sell just as badly as your own side does, and they will pay you even more for it. It is treason. It is monstrous. It is also the single most profitable idea anyone has ever put in front of you. You tell yourself that money has no country. You say yes. So now you arm both armies at once. The shell that leaves your factory might kill one of your own countrymen or one of theirs. It does not matter at all to the ledger. You have transcended the whole war. You do not care who wins anymore. You only care that it lasts. A quick victory, for the first time in all of history, has become the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. You begin very quietly to prefer a longer war. Through your contacts, you nudge, you delay, you whisper the words that keep the fighting going. Just a little longer, a peace talk that stalls, a rumor that hardens a border. Nothing you could ever be blamed for. But every extra month of slaughter is another mountain of gold, and you have learned to sleep just fine on a bed that large. Your wife stops looking at you the way she once did. Your oldest friend refuses to take your calls. At a glittering party thrown in your own honor, a mother dressed in black spits at your feet and calls you a merchant of death before the guards drag her away. You smile, you straighten your tie, and you order another bottle of champagne. But her words follow you home, and they do not leave. You have more money now than entire nations do. You could buy anything the world has to sell. And slowly you begin to notice the one strange truth about that. There is nothing left that you actually want. The hunger that once drove you out of poverty is gone, and nothing has grown to replace it but a cold, gnawing emptiness. You built an empire on the dead, and the empire, it turns out, is haunted. Some nights you think about stopping, walking away, clean, to live quietly on everything that you have taken. But men who know what you know do not simply retire. Your government would call you a traitor, the enemy would call you a liability, and the powerful partners you have made along the way would never let their most useful man just leave. You are the richest prisoner in the whole world. At the very height of it all, you are one of the most powerful men alive. Your factories stretch across a dozen countries. Prime ministers take your calls. Your fortune is so vast that no one can even accurately measure it, least of all you. From the war-mapped walls of your private study, you move steel and men and money like pieces on a board. You have become exactly what you dreamed of, a war baron. You live in a world the soldiers dying for your profits could never even imagine. Marble halls, silent servants, a table that groans with food while whole nations starve. You throw parties that last for days. You collect beautiful things and beautiful people. And every single stone of your palace was paid for in blood you were always very careful never to see. You call it success. You have to call it something. You have children now, raised in luxury, who will never know a single hungry day. You tell yourself that this is why you did it. For them, so they would never be poor and frightened the way that you once were. But you see the way they treat the servants, the way money has already made them cruel. You wanted to give them the world, and you are starting to wonder what kind of world you actually gave them. Late at night, alone, you catch your own reflection in a darkened window. The ambitious young man, who was not afraid of anything, is long gone. What looks back at you now is older, colder, and very, very tired. You have won every game you ever set out to play. So you wait to feel triumphant. You wait for the pride, the joy, the peace. And you keep on waiting, and it never comes. Then the ground begins, ever so slightly, to shift beneath you. A crusading journalist you cannot buy. A young prosecutor who cannot be threatened. Questions in Parliament that do not go away this time. The public, exhausted by years of endless dying, is starting to look around for someone to blame. And a fabulously rich man who armed both sides of their war makes a very tempting target indeed. Worse still, the war itself is finally turning. One side is breaking, and a war that ends is a catastrophe for a man like you the day your only customer simply disappears. You have spent years quietly praying that the fighting would never stop. But wars, like everything else, eventually run out. And when this one does, all the blood on all of your money is going to be very hard to wash off. And then, one grey morning, it is simply over. The guns fall silent all at once, and the sudden quiet is the strangest sound you have ever heard in your life. In the streets far below your window, crowds weep and cheer and embrace. A whole exhausted world breathes out. Everyone you know is celebrating the peace. And you stand alone at the glass, watching your entire business model die. The orders stop overnight. The contracts all evaporate. The factories that printed money for you now sit silent, worth a fraction of what you paid for them. But that is the very smallest of your problems. Because now the war is over, the survivors are counting their dead. And they are beginning to ask out loud exactly who got rich while their sons were being fed into the mud. The word profiteer, once only whispered, is now shouted from every newspaper in the land. Governments that happily paid your prices during the war now need a villain for after it. Committees are formed, investigations are opened. The very same politicians who dined at your table now line up to condemn you before the cameras. You are about to learn that the powerful protect you only for exactly as long as you are useful to them. One by one, they all abandon you. The generals stop returning your calls. Your partners quietly shred documents with your name written on them. The men you bribed now swear that they never knew you at all. Your fortune, you finally discover, bought their company, but it never once bought their loyalty. When the storm at last breaks over your head, you look around for allies and find that you are standing entirely alone. You try to move the money, to hide it away in the neutral accounts and shell companies you built for exactly this day. But the world has changed. The secrets that made you rich are being dragged out into the daylight. The evidence of who you sold to and when is out there in 100 ledgers you no longer control. For the first time since the war began, you feel that cold touch of fear again. It comes, in the end, as a knock at the door before dawn. Not soldiers, not an angry mob, just quiet men with warrants and briefcases. They have been building the case for months. Fraud, corruption, trading with the enemy, treason. They read the charges out in a flat, tired voice, and you realize, standing there in your silk dressing gown, that all your money cannot buy back this single moment. They put you on trial and they make sure it is public. Day after day, the prosecutor lays it all out for the whole world, the inflated prices, the faulty shells, the deals with the enemy, the war deliberately prolonged for profit. The mothers of the dead pack the gallery and stare at you in silence. You have the finest lawyers that money can buy. But there are some things, you are finding out, that money simply cannot fix. The prosecutor does something you never once dared to do. He puts a number on it. Not the money you made, but the men who died holding your defective rifles, freezing in your thin blankets, waiting for shells that came late because a delay was more profitable. He reads that number aloud, and for the first time, you cannot place the report face down in a drawer. You have to sit and listen to every last digit. You lose. Of course you lose. The public needs it, and the powerful who once shielded you now need it even more than they do. Your assets are seized, your empire dismantled, your name turned into a curse that parents will use to frighten their children for a whole generation. They cannot execute you for the crime of being greedy in a greedy age, but they can take everything you have, and they do. You walk out of the courtroom with absolutely nothing. The mansions are gone, the factories are gone, the fortunes scattered to lawyers and to the state. The friends were gone long ago. Your own family, ashamed, has quietly taken a different name. You are exactly what you were before the war began, a nobody with empty pockets. Except now you are old and hated, and you can never ever go back. You end your days in a small rented room, in a city where no one knows your face, or worse, where they do. The man who once moved whole armies with a single phone call now counts coins for his bread. You have all the time in the world at last, the one thing your money could never buy you, and you spend it doing the one thing you spent a whole lifetime avoiding. You remember. You think of the boots, the blankets, the shells, the letters you filed face down and never read, the mother in black who spat at your feet and told you exactly what you were years before you were ever willing to believe her. You made yourself unimaginably rich on the worst thing human beings ever do to one another. And in the end, the war that made you is the very thing that destroyed you. So you ask yourself the only real question left. Was it worth it? All of it. The empire, the palaces, the power that felt, for a little while, like being a god. You had everything a person could ever possibly want, and you cannot now remember a single day of it that you were actually happy. You sold your soul at the very top of the market, and you are only now learning the true price. This is what it is like to be a war profiteer. To grow rich beyond all your dreams on the blood of a whole generation, and to lose it all and yourself in the very end. Somewhere out there, another man is reading tomorrow's terrible headline and feeling that same cold flicker of opportunity. Maybe it is someone like you, maybe it is you, so ask yourself honestly, what would you have done?